The human fleet approached Earth with a heavy silence, the void of space pressing down on their hearts. It had been over 300 years since the last survivors of the Great Exodus had left the ruined world behind. Those who had survived the cataclysmic war that tore Earth apart had wandered the stars, hoping to find a new home, a place where they could rebuild what had been lost. Now, after decades of searching, the time had come to return. For the fleet's captain, Amara Voss, it was a bittersweet moment. The journey had been long and fraught with peril. Countless battles with alien forces, harsh environments, and the ever-present reminder that Earth had once been home, a home that had been shattered by the greed and hubris of her ancestors. As she gazed out of the viewports, Earth's outline finally came into view, smaller than she remembered, scarred beyond recognition, but unmistakably the world she had once called home. The fleet's sensors pulsed with strange readings as they entered Earth's orbit. What they had expected to find was a lifeless rock, a world long forgotten by time. Instead, the readings were anything but dead. Energies that no human technology could explain hummed in the atmosphere. The soil, once barren, had begun to regenerate. Vegetation, slowly creeping across the ruined cities, reached skyward as if trying to reclaim what had been lost. It was as if the planet had woken from a long slumber, yet no one had lived to witness the awakening. Amara's hand gripped the command chair. There was no precedent for this. Earth's destruction had been final, complete. The survivors of the fleet had left with only a faint hope that their ancestors' mistakes would not follow them across the stars. But now, returning to a world that seemed to have healed itself raised unsettling questions. Who, or what, had made it this way? The fleet entered the atmosphere, cutting through the thick, dust-choked clouds that had once signaled the planet's death. As they descended, they saw cities, ancient cities, reclaimed by nature. Towering skyscrapers had become forests, their glass facades covered in creeping vines and blooming flowers. It was almost serene, like a dream, yet the emptiness of it all felt wrong. Where were the people? Why had no one returned to this reborn Earth before now? Amara activated the comms, her voice a calm command as she addressed her crew. Prepare to land. We'll start with the capital. Stay alert. This world may have healed, but we don't know what lies within it. Her words were met with silence. Even the crew, hardened by years of exploration and conflict, could feel the weight of the moment. The landing crafts detached from the main ship, descending toward the forgotten cities below. As the fleet made its way toward the Earth's surface, the tension in the air thickened. The moment the landing gear touched the ground, the doors of the craft opened with a hiss, revealing a world that was both alien and familiar. The ruins of human civilization lay before them, but there was something else, something watching them from the shadows. The sky, a hazy orange from the setting sun, cast an eerie glow across the landscape. Amara stepped out first, her boots crunching against the earth as she scanned the surroundings. The silence was oppressive, almost suffocating. Then, from the distance, a strange hum filled the air. It was low at first, like the whisper of wind through the trees, but it quickly grew louder, resonating through the very ground beneath their feet. And then, as if in response to their presence, the trees began to tremble. Something was moving out there, something not human, something that had been waiting for them. The hum reverberated through the ground, growing louder with every passing second. Amara's instincts flared as her hand went to her sidearm, her eyes scanning the horizon. Her crew stood tense behind her, weapons ready, but no one made a move. The sound was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was not mechanical, nor was it natural. It was something in between, an energy that seemed to pulse with purpose, a vibration that tugged at their very souls. "Keep your heads on a swivel," Amara ordered, her voice firm. "We don't know what's out there." The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and overgrown foliage, the remnants of a world that had been left to its own devices for centuries. Yet the landscape felt wrong, too still, too quiet. The creeping vines and colossal trees should have been teeming with life, but there was nothing. Not a bird in the sky, no insects buzzing among the flora. It was as if the entire planet was holding its breath. Then, they saw it. A shadow moved between the towering trees, so fast it was almost imperceptible. One of Amara's officers, Lieutenant O'Connell, squinted toward the movement. "Captain, over there," he shouted, pointing in the direction of the flicker. "Did you see that?" Before Amara could respond, the ground beneath them trembled again, this time stronger, sending a ripple through the air that shook the very leaves on the trees. The hum grew louder, vibrating in their bones, and suddenly, a figure appeared from the mist, an alien, tall and gaunt, its skin shimmering like liquid metal in the fading light. It stood motionless, a being unlike any human had ever seen, with long skeletal arms that reached down to its knees. Its face, if it could be called a face, was devoid of features, just smooth, reflective skin, like polished obsidian, with a faint glow coming from within. "Identify yourself," Amara commanded, stepping forward. The alien did not respond, but its presence was commanding. It wasn't hostile, but neither was it friendly. It simply stood there, observing them, its unnerving silence hanging between them like a barrier. Amara's crew shifted uneasily, unsure of what to make of this strange being. Her heart raced, but her training kept her calm. Without warning, the alien extended one long finger, pointing toward the ruins of a nearby city. The hum in the air grew deafening, as if the world itself was vibrating in response to the gesture. Amara followed the alien's gaze, and for the first time, she noticed the distant shapes that hadn't been there before. Figures, moving in the shadows of the ancient city, tall and indistinct, lurking just beyond the ruins. More of them. "We need to go," Amara said, a cold shiver running down her spine. Now. As if on cue, the figures in the distance started moving toward them. They were swift, darting between the crumbling buildings, their movements almost too fast for the human eye to track. Another alien appeared beside the first, and then another. They were silent, but their presence was overwhelming, a force that made the very air seem thick with their power. Amara raised her communicator to her mouth, her voice tight. "Command, we have hostile forces in the vicinity. Request immediate backup." But the communicator buzzed in her hand. No signal. She cursed under her breath. The aliens were blocking all transmissions, creating an invisible wall around them. Then, the first alien spoke. Its voice was not heard, but felt, an overwhelming sensation of understanding that flooded Amara's mind, as if the words were being transmitted directly into her thoughts. "We are the Guardians," the voice resonated within her mind. "You have returned. The reckoning has begun." The weight of those words settled over her like a dark cloud. Guardians? Reckoning? What did it mean? Amara's grip tightened on her weapon, but the alien figures continued to advance, their glowing eyes fixed on her crew. There was no turning back now. The return of humanity had awakened something ancient, something far older than the survivors could comprehend, and they would soon learn the true price of reclaiming their home. The words of the alien, resonating in Amara's mind, hung like a dark cloud over the crew. "The reckoning has begun." The phrase echoed in her thoughts, unsettling her even more than the alien presence itself. What reckoning? And who were these guardians, watching over a planet that humanity had long since abandoned? There were no answers, only the strange, unnerving silence that surrounded them. Amara signaled her crew to stay close as the group of alien figures continued to move toward them. Each step they took seemed to make the air feel heavier, as if the world itself was conspiring against them. The landscape, once breathtaking in its post-apocalyptic beauty, now felt like an unwelcoming trap. The first of the guardians raised its hand, its elongated fingers beckoning them forward. Without a word, Amara's team moved cautiously, instinctively following the being through the forest of colossal trees and overgrown ruins. They reached the outskirts of the city, where ancient skyscrapers that had once touched the sky now lay in ruin, their glass facades shattered, and steel skeletons twisted and bent under the weight of time. It was here, among the forgotten city's ruins, that the true secrets of Earth's fall began to reveal themselves. The Guardians led them into the heart of the decaying metropolis, where the remnants of human civilization lay buried under layers of earth and time. At first glance, it seemed like an ordinary city, the kind that had once thrived in Earth's golden age, but beneath the surface, something darker lurked. Amara and her crew were drawn to a vast underground complex, hidden beneath the city's ruins. It was here that the Guardians had directed them, and here that the truth of humanity's past awaited. The entrance to the underground complex was hidden within a vast crater, where a great battle had once taken place. The area was littered with broken machines, twisted metal, and the charred remnants of weapons. This had been a place of conflict, a battleground in the final days of Earth's war. Amara's eyes narrowed as her team descended into the depths. The air grew colder as they passed through a series of tunnels, the walls lined with strange, glowing symbols that seemed to pulse with an energy all their own. The further they traveled, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. It was clear that this place was not just a relic, it was a warning. At the heart of the complex, they discovered a massive chamber, its walls lined with ancient technology, machines and devices beyond human comprehension. In the center of the room stood a massive crystalline structure, glowing with an eerie, otherworldly light. As they drew closer, Amara felt a strange pull toward it, as if the crystal was calling to her. "This is what they were guarding," whispered Lieutenant O'Connell, awe in his voice. What is this place?" Amara studied the crystal, its surface etched with markings that seemed to shift and change before her eyes. It was clear that it was far more than just a relic. It was a key, but to what, she couldn't yet understand. A sudden crackle of energy surged through the chamber, and the Guardians appeared around them, their silent, ethereal presence once again filling the space. One of them stepped forward, and once again, the voice filled Amara's mind. "You are the last of your kind, and the first to return," the voice said, deep and resonant. "This place is the seed of your undoing and your salvation. The truth of your ancestors is here, but so is the power that destroyed them." A flood of images rushed into Amara's mind, visions of Earth in its prime, a civilization that had once stood at the pinnacle of technological advancement. But these visions twisted into something darker. Wars fought between factions of humans who had gained unimaginable power, culminating in a catastrophic event that shattered the planet. The crystal before them was a remnant of that power, a weapon that had been locked away to prevent its misuse. The Guardians were not protectors, but jailers, guarding the last remains of a humanity that had doomed itself. And now, humanity had returned to face the consequences of its own legacy. Amara's heart raced as the realization struck her. The power to rebuild Earth, and the power to destroy it, was in their hands. But was humanity ready to wield it again? Or would they, too, fall victim to the same forces that had once torn the planet apart? The reckoning had begun, and humanity was once again at the center of a battle that would determine the fate of Earth. The chamber fell silent after the alien voice faded from Amara's mind, leaving an unsettling weight in the air. The vision of Earth's past lingered in her thoughts, like a shadow over her every move. Humanity had returned to this world, not just to reclaim their home, but to confront the legacy of their ancestors, one that had shattered the very planet they had once called home. The crystal in the center of the room pulsed with power, and the Guardians stood motionless, their presence suffocating. But despite the enormity of what they had uncovered, there was no time to linger on questions of the past. The immediate danger was real and growing. Tensions between the human factions had already begun to fracture, and now the revelation of Earth's ancient secrets only added fuel to the fire. Amara could feel the stress and uncertainty rippling through the crew. They had been united by a common goal, to reclaim Earth, but now, faced with the power and responsibility of the crystal, divisions began to surface. It started with Captain Jarek Halston, a battle-hardened officer who had been one of Amara's most trusted commanders during the long voyage. He was practical, cautious, and had always been a staunch believer in survival above all else. Yet, in the wake of their discovery, Halston had become more and more insistent on wielding the power of the crystal. He believed it was their right, humanity's right, to unlock its potential and use it to dominate the alien factions that threatened them. "We can't just leave this here," Halston argued, his voice rising. "We've waited centuries to come back, and now we're going to let these beings stand in our way. Earth is ours. We can take it back with this power." His words echoed through the command center, stirring a murmur of agreement from some of the crew. They had spent too long in the dark, fighting for survival in alien systems, to let the Guardians or anyone else stand between them and their home, but not all of them agreed. Lieutenant O'Connell, ever the voice of reason, spoke up, his expression tight with worry. "Captain, this isn't the same Earth we left behind. The power contained in that crystal, it's not something we understand. Unlocking it could mean destroying everything we've worked for. We need to proceed with caution." Amara watched as the two men locked eyes, each representing a different vision for humanity's future. The division between them was more than just ideology, it was a fundamental difference in how they viewed their return to Earth. Halston saw the planet as a resource to be exploited, a prize to be seized by force if necessary. O'Connell, on the other hand, recognized that humanity had already made its mistakes, and any repeat of the past would doom them all. Before Amara could intervene, the tension in the room escalated further. A transmission came in from the fleet's command ship, a sharp voice cutting through the air. "Captain Voss, you need to make a decision. We've received reports of movement on the northern front. Alien forces are massing. There's talk of a full-scale invasion. The renegade aliens are organizing to attack." The urgency in the message silenced the room, but it did nothing to quell the rising tensions between the human factions. In an instant, the rift between the crew's leaders seemed wider than ever. The clock was ticking, and Earth was on the verge of war once again. Halston turned toward Amara, his eyes burning with determination. "We can end this before it begins. We can strike first and take control of this planet. I say we use the crystal." But O'Connell stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "No. If we use the crystal now, we risk becoming the very thing that destroyed Earth before. We need to unite, not divide. We fight the aliens, but we do it with the strength we have, not with the power of a weapon we don't understand." Amara felt the weight of their words. She was no stranger to war and sacrifice, but this felt different. The human race had already been here once, on the brink of annihilation, and she couldn't shake the fear that they were repeating the same fatal mistakes. "Enough," she said, her voice cutting through the conflict. "We're not doing this until we know more. We need to investigate the crystal, understand what it really is before we make any decision. And as for the aliens, whether renegade or otherwise, our first priority is to defend Earth. Together." But even as she spoke the words, she knew that the fragile alliance between the humans was already fracturing. Halston's resolve was unwavering, and O'Connell's warnings seemed to fall on deaf ears. The line between survival and destruction had never been thinner, and Amara realized, with a sinking feeling, that the greatest threat to humanity might not be the aliens on the horizon, but the division within their own ranks. Time was running out, and as the factions prepared for war, the crystal's secrets remained locked, waiting for someone to unlock its potential. But which path would humanity choose, and at what cost? The atmosphere on Earth had shifted from tense uncertainty to outright chaos. The brief unity among the human factions had shattered. Captain Halston, with his unwavering belief in humanity's right to wield the power of the crystal, had begun rallying those under his command to prepare for an immediate strike on the alien forces that were reportedly massing at the northern front. Meanwhile, Lieutenant O'Connell and those who agreed with him worked tirelessly to fortify their positions, wary of any use of the crystal until they could fully understand its implications. Amara stood between the two factions, the weight of command pressing down on her more heavily than ever. There was no easy answer. The crystal represented hope and destruction, a weapon and a tool of salvation, and it had the power to alter the fate of humanity forever. In the midst of this turmoil, the alien threat that had lingered in the background now loomed on the horizon. Reports came in from the fleet. The alien forces were unlike anything humanity had faced before, strange, biomechanical creatures, organized in a way that hinted at a deep, almost ancient intelligence. They were coming, and they were preparing for a fight. The renegade faction, led by the mysterious aliens who had once protected Earth, had already begun to move out of the shadows, revealing a vast network of underground bunkers and hidden strongholds beneath the planet's surface. Their actions hinted at something darker, a long-standing war that had never truly ended. The Guardians, once silent and watchful, now acted as if they were preparing for something inevitable. Their presence, while still enigmatic, had begun to feel more like a force of nature than a group of protectors. As Amara and her team prepared for what would inevitably become a confrontation, they began to realize the truth. This was not just a war between humans and aliens. It was a war for the soul of Earth, one that had been fought for centuries without human knowledge. Amara gathered her officers in the command center, the hum of the engines echoing in the background. We're not just fighting for a home, we're fighting for control over Earth's legacy. There's more to this war than we've been told, and we're running out of time to uncover it. Halston's voice cut through the tension. What's your plan, Captain? The aliens are mobilizing, and we need to strike before they gain ground. We can't sit idly by while they regroup. Patience, Jarek, O'Connell interrupted, his face pale but determined. If we go in blindly, we risk triggering something far worse. We need information, not just weapons. We need to understand what the Guardians are hiding. The back and forth between Halston and O'Connell continued, but Amara knew the clock was ticking. The Northern Front was a ticking time bomb, and the unknown movements of the Guardians only deepened the mystery. Despite the human faction's internal divisions, the larger war had already begun, one that involved not only the survival of humanity, but also the fate of the entire planet. Amara turned toward the large map displayed in front of them, pinpointing locations of alien activity that had been detected in the last few hours. The enemy's forces were moving rapidly, heading toward the cities where the survivors had begun their settlements. But what concerned her even more were the signals coming from underground. From the depths beneath Earth's surface, strange patterns emerged, ones that indicated something significant was buried there. What are they hiding? Amara muttered under her breath, more to herself than to anyone else. One of the officers, a tech specialist named Mia Rivera, spoke up, her voice steady. Captain, there's an encrypted transmission coming from the alien stronghold in the south. It's not like anything we've intercepted before. Amara's eyes narrowed. The alien network was more advanced than they had assumed, and it seemed they had been working in the shadows for far longer than they'd realized. This wasn't just a fight for Earth. It was a fight for the truth that had been buried beneath centuries of conflict, a truth that could either save or doom them all. We need to infiltrate that stronghold, Amara ordered, her voice resolute. We need to uncover what they've been hiding, or this war will be over before we even have a chance to fight back. Prepare a strike team. But even as the orders left her lips, Amara felt the weight of what was to come. The hidden war had begun in earnest. There were forces at play far older and more powerful than anything humanity had encountered, and the only way to win this war was to confront the dark secrets buried beneath the surface of Earth itself. The question was no longer if humanity would survive, but at what cost. The underground stronghold loomed ahead, nestled beneath a vast mountain range in the southern part of the planet. Amara's strike team, a mix of the most skilled soldiers and researchers, moved swiftly through the dense jungle that separated them from their destination. The air was thick with humidity, and the soft sound of distant thunder echoed in the sky as the storm clouds rolled in. The atmosphere felt heavy, as if the planet itself was bracing for what was about to unfold. The encrypted transmission they had intercepted had been their first real clue. It was a cryptic message, a series of coordinates leading them to an ancient facility buried deep underground. The Guardians had never acknowledged its existence, but Amara was certain that this was where the key to ending the war, and perhaps understanding Earth's fall, lay. Their mission was simple: infiltrate the stronghold, extract any intelligence they could find, and return before the alien forces could strike. But the more they advanced, the more Amara felt the weight of the choices before them. The war was no longer just a battle for Earth's survival. It was a struggle for control of the truth, and every decision they made now would shape humanity's future. The storm broke just as they reached the entrance of the stronghold. The team moved in, weapons drawn, scanning for any signs of the enemy. The interior of the facility was a labyrinth of steel corridors and abandoned rooms. They had expected traps, and they weren't disappointed. The walls were lined with dormant machinery that hummed to life as they passed, activating with eerie precision. The deeper they went, the more they realized the place was not just a military installation, it was a tomb. At the center of the complex, they found what they had been searching for: a vast chamber filled with data cores, ancient consoles, and a series of holographic displays. The information contained within these systems was staggering: history, technology, and the secrets of Earth's lost civilizations. But there was one piece of data that stood out: a final transmission from Earth's last days. The message was clear: humanity had not just fallen to external forces, but had, in fact, been the architects of their own destruction. The war had been caused by an experiment gone wrong, an attempt to harness the power of the crystal they had discovered. It was a weapon, yes, but also a source of immense power that could bend the fabric of reality itself. It had been used recklessly, and in doing so, humanity had torn apart their own planet, triggering cataclysmic events that shattered Earth's ecosystems and devastated civilization. The Guardians had been created to prevent humanity from repeating the same mistakes. Amara's breath caught in her throat as she read the final message. The truth was worse than she had imagined. The crystal was not just a relic, it was a Pandora's box, and humanity had unwittingly reopened it. "We need to get this information back to the fleet," she said, her voice tight. But before she could issue the command, a surge of energy rippled through the room. The machinery hummed louder, and the walls seemed to shift. The Guardians had arrived. The room filled with a brilliant, blinding light, and before Amara could react, a figure appeared in the center of the chamber. It was a Guardian, but unlike any they had encountered before. This one was taller, more imposing, its form radiating power. It spoke, its voice once again resonating in their minds, and Amara felt the full weight of its message. "The power you seek is not for you," the Guardian said, its tone calm but filled with an undeniable finality. "You have unlocked the truth, but with it, you have awakened the price of victory. The crystal was never meant to be used. To harness it now is to condemn your species to the same fate as your ancestors." Amara's heart raced as the implications settled in. They had uncovered the truth, but in doing so, they had triggered something ancient, something that could destroy them all. The crystal's power was a double-edged sword, and humanity was standing on the edge of a precipice. The choice was now before them: to use the crystal and risk repeating history's mistakes, or to walk away and find another way to secure Earth's future. The Guardians moved closer, their silent figures towering over the team. Amara stood frozen, knowing that any decision now would come at a cost. Victory was within their grasp, but it would demand a price, and no matter what path they chose, there would be no going back. The war had always been about survival, but now, it was about something far greater, whether humanity could rise above its past and avoid the same mistakes that had destroyed their world once before. The chamber was silent except for the steady hum of the dormant machinery that surrounded them. The Guardian's warning hung heavy in the air, and Amara could feel the weight of its words pressing down on her shoulders. The crystal, with all its immense power, was not just a weapon. It was a curse, a tool that could either save or damn humanity. And now, with the full truth laid bare before them, Amara was faced with the hardest decision of her life. The team stood frozen, eyes locked on the towering Guardian, its presence an immovable force. The others, too, were silent, unsure of what to do next. Captain Helston, still determined to use the crystal to defeat the alien threat once and for all, stepped forward, his jaw clenched and his eyes burning with resolve. "We can't let fear stop us now. This is our chance to take control of Earth," Halston said, his voice low but firm. "We have the power to reshape this planet, to push back the alien forces. The crystal is ours to command." O'Connell shook his head, his voice tight with frustration. "You're not listening, Jurek. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about what we're willing to sacrifice. That power comes with a price, and we've seen what happens when we try to control it." Amara's gaze flicked between the two men, her mind racing. She understood both their points. Halston was right. Humanity had already lost so much, and now that they were finally home, there was a chance to reclaim their future. But O'Connell was equally right. This was no longer just a fight for survival. This was a fight for the soul of humanity, and they could not afford to make the same mistakes again. As the Guardian's gaze lingered on them, its voice resonated in their minds once more. "You have already unlocked the power you sought, but it will not save you. The price of wielding it is more than you can comprehend. You are bound to the same fate as those who came before you." A chill ran down Amara's spine. The weight of the Guardian's warning felt more like a prophecy than a threat. And yet, deep in her heart, Amara knew that the only way to secure humanity's future was to fight, but to fight with wisdom, not blind ambition. Suddenly, a crackling sound filled the room. The alien forces had arrived. Their biomechanical soldiers were closing in on the stronghold, a wave of advanced technology and lethal precision that was far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. The moment of choice was upon them. "Captain Voss, we don't have much time," O'Connell said, urgency in his voice. "We need to make a decision. Now." Amara's mind raced. The crystal was a weapon, yes, but it was also more, much more. Humanity had never truly understood its potential, and now, it seemed that the true battle was not just against the alien forces, but against the forces within themselves. "We can't fight this war with the crystal," Amara said at last, her voice steady despite the storm of thoughts in her head. "The only way we survive is by remembering what makes us human, our ability to choose, to adapt, and to fight without losing ourselves in the process." She turned toward the team. "Prepare to defend the stronghold. We fight with everything we have, but we leave the crystal alone. It's not ours to control." Halston's face twisted in frustration, but he gave a stiff nod. O'Connell breathed a sigh of relief. The decision had been made, but the cost of that decision was not yet clear. There was still a war to fight, a final stand between humanity and the alien invaders. Outside, the alien forces pressed forward, their monstrous machines advancing with cold precision. The battle would be brutal. The fight for Earth's future would be decided here, in the shadow of the crystal that could have ended everything. Amara gathered her team together. This is our last stand. We fight for our home, for our future, and for the generations that will come after us, but we do it without losing our humanity. We don't become what they were. As the doors to the stronghold blasted open, the roar of the alien forces filled the air. Amara looked at her team one last time, knowing that no matter what happened, this battle would define humanity's place in the galaxy. It was no longer about reclaiming Earth. It was about earning the right to call it home. With one final nod, she stepped forward into the storm. The battle for Earth had begun, and the cost of victory would be greater than any of them could truly understand. The battle raged on, fierce and unforgiving. Outside the stronghold, the alien forces surged forward, their biomechanical armies advancing relentlessly, tearing through the jungle and pushing closer to the heart of the facility. Inside, Amara and her team fought with everything they had, their weapons blazing as they repelled wave after wave of the enemy. The corridors shook with the impact of explosions, and the hum of distant gunfire mixed with the frantic calls over the comms. The decision to leave the crystal undisturbed was now a bitter one. With each alien that fell, with every inch of ground they gained, Amara felt a gnawing doubt. Had they made the right choice? Could they have ended this war sooner with the crystal's power? Yet, even as the questions swirled, another truth became clear. This was humanity's fight. The war was not to be won through power alone, but through determination, unity, and the very things that made them human. In the chaos, Amara's thoughts never strayed far from the warning the Guardians had given. The crystal, with all its promise of victory, was a weapon of destruction. What would it mean to wield it? How much would they have to sacrifice to control such power? The cost was too high to be ignored, and yet the alien forces were coming, their superior technology a reminder of the price they would pay if they failed. "Captain Voss, we've got an opening," O'Connell shouted over the noise of the battlefield. "We can push them back if we move now." Amara turned to see the soldier's face grim with determination. The lines of defense were starting to falter, but the stronghold wasn't lost yet. She made the decision without hesitation. "Let's move. We hold the line," Amara commanded, rallying her team. They charged forward, weapons raised, and for a fleeting moment, it felt as though they were not just fighting for Earth, but fighting for the future of humanity itself. Hours passed, and the battle only grew more intense. The alien forces, relentless and methodical, seemed almost endless, but the human spirit, the will to survive, refused to break. With each fallen ally, the resolve of Amara's team only grew stronger. They weren't fighting just for themselves, they were fighting for the memory of those who had perished, for the promise of a future that had seemed so distant. At the heart of the stronghold, the final stand began. The team made their way to the central control room, where the alien forces were converging for their last push. With the walls closing in, Amara knew that this was it. This was their last chance to make a difference. In that moment of truth, as the alien forces closed in, a pulse of light erupted from deep within the facility. It was not from the crystal. It came from something else, something far more ancient, far more powerful. The Guardians had intervened, their hidden war now fully revealed. They had remained silent for centuries, watching over Earth, but now, they had chosen to act. The ground trembled beneath them, and Amara's heart skipped a beat. The Guardians were not just protectors of Earth, they were its last line of defense against extinction. With a final surge of power, the Guardians activated an ancient protocol buried deep within Earth's core. A shockwave of energy rippled outward, sweeping through the alien ranks like a tidal wave. Their machines faltered, their forces scattered, and within moments, the once feared invaders were retreating. It was over. The battle for Earth had been won. Amara stood amidst the wreckage, her breath heavy and her body bruised, but alive. The victory had come at an unimaginable cost, but humanity had endured. The alien forces had been driven back, and the planet that had been lost so long ago was now theirs once more. As the dust settled, the Guardians appeared once more, their presence awe-inspiring yet strangely peaceful. They didn't speak, they simply watched. They had done what was necessary, and now Earth would be given another chance. Amara turned to her team, her voice filled with both relief and resolve. "We've won, but this is just the beginning. We've been given a new dawn, a chance to rebuild, and this time, we'll do it right." As the first light of morning broke through the clouds, casting a golden hue across the battlefield, Amara knew that Earth had truly come home. The scars of the past would remain, but the future was unwritten. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through force alone, but through the strength of will, unity, and the lessons learned from their own mistakes. The dawn of a new era had arrived, and this time, humanity would ensure that it was a dawn worth having.